Step back in time with me, dear viewer. Update 9.7 just dropped. You're in your favorite Tier 10 battleship or large cruiser, and you're sailing on your way to the cap or flank you've decided to go and push up and support. Then suddenly, you hear aircraft engines, and you look up, and oh no, the skies are filled with German dive bombers coming right at you. And now you know you're about to lose about a quarter of your HP if you're in a battleship, about half of your HP if you're in a large cruiser, because the Richthofen player has decided that you are going to be his chew toy for this stage of the match. And my god, what a busted ship this was when she came out. I mean, good lord. For those of you that were around back then, I'm sure you have similar memories of getting a quarter of your HP removed by the Richthofen in one run without really being able to do anything about it because, well, she has AP bombs and whoo-wee, this ship was so cracked back in the day. Why? We're going to get into that in today's video. She's obviously nowhere near this good anymore, and we'll talk about why she's not. And it's just kind of weird how the Richthofen was this godly powerful ship, and it doesn't seem that the reputation has stuck with her like so many other ships still carry the reputation for being busted or cracked, like the Petropavlos, for example. That is a ship that during testing was just insanely broken, and I'm sure we've all seen the compilations of Petro, citadeling battleships like 15 kilometers away and such, right? And how tanky Petropavlos used to be. But, I mean, her guns got nerfed into the dirt in terms of accuracy. She's much easier to citadel and deal with nowadays than she was back in the days. But we still think she's insanely busted. Well, I don't, and I know a fair amount of you guys know the truth about her as well, but you still see players complaining about her in chat, even though it's like, well, she's nowhere near as cracked as she used to be. Say with like Smolensk and Thunderer and Conqueror and all these other busted ships like the Kremlin, but for some reason MVR hasn't carried that stigma with her, which is really weird to think about. But anyway, the ship herself, what is it? Well, for some reason, before getting a French carrier line and still not having a French carrier line, we got the German CV line for whatever reason. They build one carrier. Well, they didn't even finish it. They almost built one carrier during World War II, and now they get a whole line of CVs. But all right. So the thing with the German CVs is that they have the AP rockets, AP dive bombers, and torpedoes that are fast but deal a light amount of damage. It's a really interesting combination of aircraft and munitions because up until this point, most CVs had some way to get some nice damage over time, usually with either the HE rockets or HE bombers. And if you had AP bombers, you still usually had HE rockets to get, that good, consistent damage. But the German line, not so much, and it still is essentially pretty much like that today. I know they've messed with the idea of, giving some other lines the AP rockets and such, or some other premium carriers AP rockets, but still today, to my knowledge, I believe this is the only line that has, AP rockets up and down the entire line, and the AP dive bombers, which does make playing the MVR and the other German CVs a bit more of a challenge, because like with HE rockets, you can really hit whatever ship you're targeting from whatever angle, and sure, they may not pin, but you still have the chance of causing fire. Same with the HE bombs, right? Doesn't really matter what angle you hit the target with your HE bombs, you just have to hit it and you'll be doing damage and causing fires. But with the German CVs, obviously you have to hit the ship in the right spot with the AP rockets to pin the thing, and then really if you want to do any sizable amount of damage, you have to hit in the right spot in order to citadel the target with your AP rockets, and same with the dive bombers. Now, back in the day, again, this is quite some time ago in update 9.7, this is before we had a couple of the big global changes to CVs. Before we had the machine gun firing delay for the rockets. So with the AP planes back in the day, with the AP rockets, if you could just catch the broadside of whatever ship it was that you were dealing with, you could just fly up to them, click left mouse and then Citadel and remove a cool like 15k from their HP. I remember when I first got the Richtofen, I disintegrated a Moskva in I think maybe 3 or 4 minutes with them because the dude was camping an island, and I just kept poking him in his side with the AP rockets, and yeah, there wasn't really much the man could do about that. So that was kind of nuts. And the AP rockets as well, even though you may not be able to citadel something with it, if you could, get like the bow or the stern of a battleship or the superstructure of a battleship, and just get the AP rockets to pin them, they would still be doing a pretty good, decent amount of damage there. Not as good as HE rockets, right? Because if the target would turn and angle, then, well, you're going to bounce and get no damage. So it's a feast or famine thing with the rockets. But what was really cracked about the MVR back in the day was the freaking dive bombers, like I was talking about in the intro. With the MVR's dive bombers, you could very, very easily bully battleships, tier 10 battleships, out of existence with, if you were even slightly lucky, getting a nice roll of 25k to most tier 10 battleships, with the exception of like I believe the Republic and the Yami, because of the way their citadels were placed. You could, again, 25k these fellas in one run with the AP dive bombers. What was also very infuriating about it is that there wasn't a whole lot you could do. You could try to maneuver and such, but the reticle was smaller back in the day than it is today, so you could fit the MVR's reticle within the the boundaries of most tier 10 battleships' flight decks. So yeah, that's kind of maddening for us back in the day, which means that, yeah, turning you could probably avoid getting fully 25k'd by the MVR, but you're still probably going to eat a bomb or two, which is still doing like 10 to 15k damage if they sneak 2 in there. So that sucked. And you can imagine, as someone who enjoyed playing GK a lot back in the day, and still so today, that ship is huge, right? So it was just painful to try and play with the MVRs, with the MVRs being much more popular back in the day than they are today. So that was annoying. And then the torpedo bombers they're just still pretty good. I mean, they have the rocket torpedoes, which are pretty neat to look at. They're fast, but they don't really do a whole lot of damage. You usually wind up with about, depending upon, again, the torpedo protection that we're talking about, you do about 5-6k a hit, maybe. Again, depending upon what ship you're dealing with, right? But they are fast, so they do hit much more consistently so than slower torpedoes. So you still have that going for you. So it was really weird with the MVRs that you would normally use the torpedoes to deal with DDs and light cruisers because they were so fast. And if you were good at leading those targets, you could get consistent hits on those targets. Whereas back in the day, most carriers typically use their HE rockets to deal with DDs and light cruisers because HE rockets. So that was kind of a weird thing with the MVR. So yeah, this thing was absolutely terrifying. If you had an exposed citadel, it was coming for you, and it was probably going to make your day miserable with rocket planes. And again, if you were a large target like a battleship or a large cruiser, you were having an absolutely terrible time. And keep in mind too, like that 25k roll that they could do to battleships, it could still do to a battle cruiser or like a large cruiser like a Stalingrad or a Hindenburg, the physically big tier 10 cruisers. But that's like literally half your HP with those AP bombers. So what happened to it though? So in 9.12 they did nerf the ellipse. They increased the size to where you can no longer fit it within the deck of most tier 10 battleships. So that was a bit better, but you were still getting chunked for a fair amount. But what did happen, like what happened with so many other CVs, we got hit with a string of global changes that wounded up nerfing the MVR by quite a bit. Of course, the big change is that we got the machine gun firing delay applied to the rocket planes for CVs. Now, The AP rockets, they still have a much shorter firing delay than the HE rockets because, again, AP rockets, it takes a lot more effort to get good consistent damage. With AP rockets. You have to aim properly, you have to aim for the juicy parts of the ship, and having a 5-second firing delay for that is a bit much, but it is still much more difficult today than it was back in the day when you would just instantly let the rockets go. And then we had a series of changes to the bomb reticles, and I've talked about this with the Graf Zeppelin too, because it did negatively affect the Graf Zeppelin, but the Graf Zeppelin was a CV, and it is a CV that's already a lower performing CV. But anyway, so they they didn't mess with the ellipse too much, they messed with the way that the bombs fall. There's a period of time where they made most of the CVs in game, their bombs tended to fall to the outside of the ellipse rather than towards the inside of the ellipse. So again, with HE bombs, doesn't really matter too much as long as you actually hit the target. But with AP bombs, you want to hit as central to your ellipse as you can, because you're probably aiming for the middle of the ship's deck where the citadel's at. And now that your bombs tend to go away from that, well, that kind of kills it for you, right? Especially with AP bombs. And they nerfed the damage that bombs did across the board for CV. So the MVR did get a decent nerf to its bomb damage. So now your bombs aren't hitting like they used to. Your ellipse is bigger, and you're just doing less damage out of the gate thanks to that nerf to your AP bombs. So that kind of killed it for, well, in general, really. Now, they did come back in, what was it, update, it was like 11.1, 11.2, or it might have been 12 point something. But later on, they did come back, and they nudged the bombs to fall more towards the interior portion of the reticle rather than to the exterior. So now, when you do go on a bombing run, you'll probably hit the target ship, if it's like a tier 10 battleship, with probably like 2 bombs. If you get really lucky, you might get 3 and might get a glimpse as to what old Richthofen was back in the day. So today, though, how is she doing? Well, I took her out as part of getting some background footage for the CV changes that I was talking about last weekend. She is definitely a CV that you have to be more cognizant of what it is that you're attacking. Don't get me wrong, with CVs, of course, target selection is very important, but it's more of like, okay, is it an AA ship or is it not an AA ship? And is it with other ships or is it by itself? Typically, you're going to go after whatever is by itself with most CVs, and with the Richthofen, that's pretty true for a lot of it. But you really have to be looking for those ships that have those, high amount of freeboard that you can get your AP rockets into their side and citadel them. And you have to, of course, be looking out for those those other ships that are kind of camping on the islands and such, or larger battleships that you can abuse with your AP bombs. There's a bit more aiming involved too, because again, this ship is an AP focused ship, so you can't really rely on damage over time like other ships can. You can't really farm with Richthofen, because most other ships, they do HE damage with like their bombs or their HE rockets and such. So that damage, a lot of that damage that you get from those HE bombs and such is usually fire damage, and that can of course be healed back. But with the Richthofen, it can't, because you're doing a lot of citadel damage. Right, that's what AP munitions do. So you can't really farm with it, which is just interesting to see that from a CV. And this is the CV line I've probably played the most out of, well, any other CV line in the game. And while it's still a challenge to play, it's a pretty fun challenge, and I still like the ship. Granted, I'm not that much of a carrier player, but I do typically take out the Richthofen if I do need carrier footage, because I would like to, just get a glimpse of what it used to be and just see how it's doing in today's World of Warships from time to time when we do talk about CVs and such in game. Oh, it's also very good at murdering CVs, by the way, especially like a midway with the AP rockets. Man, you can quickly make yourself the only CV in the game if you really dedicate yourself to murdering the midway or the FDR if you do get one of those opposing you because of, again, the AP rockets, or I believe the Soviet CVs are quite squishy as well. So it's kind of fun for that. And again, if you want to CV snipe, right, or you want to bully cruisers with big freeboards or tier 10 battleships. So, just wanted to take a look back at the Reticle. It's been a second since we've done one of these look back at videos. So, yeah, a ship that used to be probably the most despised ship in the game for a hot minute, and when that fell off quite quickly, and again, kind of lost its reputation for that. So, let me know what you guys think about the Reticle in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday and wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.